All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Good morning, everybody. It is the Mark Thompson Show. Albert along for the ride. No Mark Thompson today, sadly. He will be back tomorrow and Friday. But today it's Albert and I running the show. Hello, Albert.
Hello, Kim. Yes, we are in charge, and Mark will be back soon, actually.
But today we have an interview that Mark did yesterday with Dr. Rob Davidson, and they talk a lot about the state of health in America, vaccines on the discussion table, also measles and other things regarding MAHA, the Make America Healthy Again movement. So Mark and Dr. Rob Davidson coming up in just a few minutes. John Rothmann, unable to join the show live today, but I got him last night. Taped a conversation with him. He has a really intricate knowledge of the Middle East, the history there, and of the current hostage deal that has just been made. I called it a peace deal with him several times, and he kept correcting me over and over again. It's not a peace deal, he said, it's a hostage deal. And so I'm still trying to wrap my brain around the whole thing, but we have a great discussion, that coming up as well. Belinda Waymouth with It's Planet Stupid, she will be in at the end for a live interview, so a lot on the table today. But Mark sent me an email this morning, or a text this morning rather, about this Young Republicans group in New York. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but these young men have been saying some horrible, horrible things. More than almost 3,000 pages worth of texts and communications have been obtained by Politico. And the comments traded are really, really horrible. So much so that it's almost like I don't know how to talk about this story because I don't want to say the horrible things. I'll just say it's awfully racist, very sexist, talking about assaults of a sexual nature, calling people horrible names. It's offensive. It's awful. And there are calls for members of this Young Republicans group to step down because of it. I have huge worries about what this says about young men in our country. We know that there have been studies done that they have a hard time talking to girls, that they're spending too much time online, that maybe because of all the things they're exposed to online, they have this unrest and anger being whipped up. So this kind of is I think, an example of what's happening with young men in this country. These young Republicans are, when they think they're just chatting with each other, the things they say are really, really awful. This morning, an article came out on Newsweek, and that is what Mark sent over. And it's about Vice President J.D. Vance's response, because a lot of the communications were published on Politico. Politico did a big story about what's happening with them, their calls. They've even listed the names of the young men involved. And you would think that
there are also young women in this group chat as well. So
it's awful.
Coming from both sides.
So I thought it was a young men's group. Are there a lot of women involved? Because the names I saw listed as being involved were mostly men's names, I think. But I'll believe you.
I'll have to double check, but I do think that there were.
Let's find out how many women were involved in this as well. But J.D. Vance responds to this scandal with a post on X, and he says, "This is far worse than anything said in a college group chat." And the guy who said it could become the AG of Virginia, he said, "I refuse to join the pearl clutching when powerful people call for political violence." One of the young men involved, apparently, they were talking about again, horrible things, calling people racist things. And there is now a Democrat. His name is Jones, and he's facing pressure to drop out of the Virginia election for Attorney General next month because he apparently sent texts in 2022 that were made public that at the time called for violence against the House Speaker, or the former state House Speaker in Virginia. And that's what Vance is referring to, that the things that Jones said are much worse than the things these young Republicans are saying. So Vance coming then to the defense of these young Republicans, just to kind of clarify. Here's the list of names that Albert has on the screen. So I see there's an Annie there, which I assume is a young woman, and the rest, and a Brianna. So yeah, there's a couple girls, young ladies involved in this as well. At a time when the White House, MAGA, seems to be pointing the finger at the left for political violence and for online content, this young Republicans group coming to light is not a good look for the image that they're trying to project, right? That it's only the left that is wrong. It's only the left that is being ugly. Clearly, we have some ugliness all around, but I think you and I already knew that. So the fact that J.D. Vance can't come out and say it's wrong, that he has to whataboutism it to point to a Republican and a Democrat in 2022 who said things online, a young man that is now apparently in line to become the Attorney General of Virginia. It's not taking ownership. It's not saying, look, this is wrong and that was wrong. Why even bring up something that's not pertinent to this specific matter? We always do that as a way to shuffle blame. And blame seems to be something so important to this current administration. If you can blame someone, then you're golden. You get away with everything else. Just blame someone else for it. People need to be held accountable for what they say and for their actions. So, just another incident that we can chalk up as a lack of character for the vice president. J.D. Pritzker gave an interview this morning to, I think it was a Sirius satellite news reporter. He talked a little bit about the president having cognitive decline. And what he said was that everyone around Trump knows that he has cognitive decline, but they aren't doing anything because they're benefiting from it. He also said that the situation with ICE can be compared to Germany in the 1930s and 40s. So I think we have some video of this. Albert, let's see if we can play that.
He's demented, literally, unhinged. And this is somebody who's so insecure that he lashes out pretending that he can come arrest people for no reason at all. He can't. He isn't going to do it. Taco. Trump always chickens out. What kind of a country are we living in where the president of the United States is targeting his political opponents? I mean, that is the world that we're living in now, where he is calling out. He said he was going to jail Gavin Newsom. He says he's going to jail me. He says he's going to jail the mayor of the city of Chicago. These are people who stand against him, disagree with him, speak out about it, but literally have done nothing wrong. We are doing the people's business by standing up for them.
He also said, and this is a quote, "Everything about the constitutional democracy that was Germany at the time before Hitler took over, and it only took him 53 days to change it to something other than a constitutional republic." This is Pritzker speaking. "I've been calling this out for a long time that, again, I don't think that we're headed toward a Holocaust." Pritzker said, "I think it happens to be the thing I know best because I've spent so much time with Holocaust survivors, but authoritarian regimes," he said, read On Tyranny or other books that he said he thinks everyone's reading now about how they operate. And he said it really is a slow encroachment on everything that is near and dear to you. And I don't know if you've been feeling this way when you see the National Guard in our cities and you see people being um, punished for speaking out for free speech in America. These things that are near and dear to us that seem to be being stripped away. And so the comments resonated with me, but that's JD Pritzker this morning. Speaking of free speech, I know we played on the show the clip of George Stephanopoulos cutting off JD Vance over the weekend. And it was, JD Vance refusing to answer a question. And Stephanopoulos, clearly fed up, just said, I see that you're refusing to answer the question. He ends the interview and he cuts off the vice president of the United States in a moment that is like, oh, I can see that what Stephanopoulos did was right. He wasn't going to get an answer to the question. But Trump not happy. And I knew at that moment that Stephanopoulos would pay. Apparently, all of ABC will pay because Trump refused to take questions from ABC and noted that moment when Stephanopoulos cut off Vance. Here it is.
Mr. President,
Your ABC fake news.
First
of all, congratulations.
I don't take questions from ABC fake news. After what you did with Stephanopoulos to the Vice President of the United States, I don't take questions from ABC fake news. Brian, go ahead.
Yes, sir. First.
Yeah. Earlier in the briefing, Trump had called Stephanopoulos a nasty person, said it was inappropriate to cut off what he called a highly respected vice president of the United States mid-sentence. He also referred to the settlement. ABC News agreed to pay $15 million toward Trump's presidential library to settle a defamation lawsuit as well. All of this stems from Stephanopoulos cutting off the vice president who refused to answer a question about whether or not the border czar, Tom Homan, accepted a $50,000 bribe and was caught on video in an FBI investigation doing so. Here's the video of this.
Oh, it's just
just playing the rolling tape? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just visual.
So during this interchange, Stephanopoulos asks Vance several times, did he or did he not, Homan, accept a bag full of cash? And what you hear Stephanopoulos saying is everything but yes, he did or no, he didn't. He doesn't answer the question, manages to try to twist it, and Stephanopoulos doesn't let him off the hook, finally cuts off the interview. Now ABC paying for that. I'm sure Stephanopoulos will as well. And it becomes kind of scary, this whole retribution thing.
I think I have some of the clip now.
All right, let's watch it.
Right, but I'm not sure you answered the question. Are you saying that he did not accept the $50,000?
George, this story has been covered ad nauseum. He did not take a bribe. Did he accept $50,000? I'm sure that in the course of Tom Homan's life, he has been paid more than $50,000 for services. The question is, did he do something illegal? And there's absolutely no evidence that Tom Homan has ever taken a bribe or done anything illegal, which is why he's working in the administration.
I'm asking you, did he accept the $50,000 that was caught on the surveillance tape? Did he accept that $50,000 or not?
George, I don't know what you're talking about. Did he accept $50,000 for what?
He was recorded on an audio tape in September 2024, an FBI surveillance tape, accepting $50,000 in cash. Did he keep that money?
Accepting $50,000 for doing what, George? I'm not even sure I understand the question. Is it illegal to take a payment for doing services? The FBI has not prosecuted him. I've never seen any evidence that he's engaged in criminal wrongdoing. Nobody has accused Tom of violating a crime, even the far left media like yourself. So I'm actually not sure what the precise question is. Did he accept $50,000? Honestly, George, I don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is that he didn't violate a crime.
So you don't, what was caught on the tape, you're saying right now you don't know whether or not he kept that money?
I don't know what tape you're referring to, George. I saw media reports that Tom Homan accepted a bribe. There's no evidence of that. And here's, George, why fewer and fewer people watch your program and why you're losing credibility, because you're talking for now 5 minutes with the Vice President of the United States about this story regarding Tom Homan, a story that I've read about, but I don't even know the video that you're talking about. Meanwhile, low-income women can't get food because the Democrats and Chuck Schumer have shut down the government. Right now, we're trying to figure out how to pay our troops because Chuck Schumer has shut down the government. You're focused on a bogus story. You're insinuating criminal wrongdoing against a guy who has done nothing wrong instead of focusing on the fact that our country is struggling because our government's shut down. Let's talk about the real issues, George. I think the American people would benefit much more from that than from you going down some weird left-wing rabbit hole where the facts clearly show that Tom Homan didn't engage in any criminal wrongdoing.
It's not a weird left-wing rabbit hole. I didn't insinuate anything. I asked you whether Tom Homan accepted $50,000, as was heard on an audio tape recorded by the FBI in September 2024, and you did not answer the question. Thank you for your time this morning.
Done. Doesn't let up. Doesn't let up. But Vance is, it gets to the point of ridiculousness where he's just trying to wiggle all over the place to avoid answering the question. And so now George Stephanopoulos will pay for offending the sidekick of our dear leader. All right, we'll move on. Let's move to MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. Mark sits down with Dr. Rob Davidson, an emergency doctor from West Michigan, to talk a little bit more about it. Albert has the video.
The Mark Thompson Show. I am excited, always excited when a returning champion comes into our mix. Dr. Robert Davidson, we call him Rob, the West Michigan ER doctor, actually works in an ER in a rural community, very much affected by a lot of the decision-making that's gone on with government cutbacks in that big, beautiful bill number that was billed as beautiful but has actually had a brutal ugliness to it. He is the executive director of the Committee to Protect Healthcare. He's the co-host of Paging America. How about it for Dr. Rob Davidson? Dr. Rob, how are you, sir? Good to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me here.
Of course. I wanted to get right to some of the stuff that's going on at the CDC. It seems that RFK Jr. has again vaulted himself, even in a news cycle that's so crowded with some pretty dramatic news stories. He's vaulted himself to center stage again with the latest announcements. And I wonder if you can speak to sort of where this Make America Healthy Again situation leaves us.
Yeah, they're just further politicizing the CDC, further politicizing the public health infrastructure of this country. And now they're apparently the ACIP panel, the panel that tells us which vaccines we should be giving, already at the center of controversy. Now there's reporting that they intend to significantly overhaul the pediatric vaccine schedule that has protected my 3 kids. My kids are all adults now, but thankfully didn't get terrible diseases like measles, like polio, like Haemophilus influenza, meningitis that can cause deafness. They didn't have those things, and so many kids didn't. But now we see, biggest year for measles in 30 years, a 500% increase in measles cases this year. And they just seem hell-bent on continuing to make this worse. Whether it's that or they're just absolutely bonkers claims about autism. They want to have it in so many ways. They certainly are continuing to talk about vaccines and the components of vaccines having a link, which has not been shown. Quite the opposite. But then acetaminophen, which again, after they had this ridiculous news conference, a big study came out of Japan, huge study saying no link with Tylenol and autism. And now he seems to try to tell us that early circumcision and Tylenol combined, because one early study in 2015 of very small numbers that said we need further studies seemed to suggest some association. Further studies did not show any causative effect. And they're trying to push that again as somehow linked, because he put himself on a clock and said he was going to figure out the cause of this very complex disease with probably very many causes to it.
This is kind of one of your superpowers. When you talk about these things, you not only, I should say, bring a medical perspective, but I feel like you in the past have also identified where there might be moneyed interests at hand, or there might be, these things that are not purely about health and medicine. They're about other stuff. Is some of that going on here?
I think certainly, and we saw it in COVID, right? Certainly the move away from the tried and true means by which we keep people healthy, right? Vaccines, truly. And public health, science-based public health, rooted in the work they've done at the CDC for decades. The move away from that now allows an opening for so much of the MAHA movement, which is, online selling supplements and selling deworming medications like ivermectin to treat COVID, to treat cancer. I mean, I have good friends and colleagues, people in the committee, but people I see in the hospital who are oncologists treating cancer have people coming in with their concerned loved ones telling them they don't want them to get chemotherapy, they want them to get ivermectin, and having to have these crazy conversations about diseases, particularly with certain types of cancers that are 90% curable with standard of care routine chemotherapy or biologic therapy, and trying to explain, if you go this other route, you're probably going to die from this. I can tell you 90+% chance we can save you. You can have a productive life. And if you go this other route, so there seems to always be some alternative. During COVID, right, that alternative was, these online pharmacies popping up, online telehealth docs, folks in the whole America's Frontline Doctors movement, very right-wing physician movement. Their founder actually was convicted in January 6th and served a month in jail for being in the Capitol. That whole group, they have now a big telehealth doctor and pharmacy setup that you can go and spend $150 for the visit and another $100 for ivermectin, whatever those numbers are, and you can get your ivermectin, you can get your vitamins for COVID instead of just getting a vaccine that your insurance company would pay for. There's always something there that they're making out of this.
It's interesting because there is opportunism around this always, right? There'll always be peddling supplements, and there'll always be peddlers of alternatives. But when you see those opportunists move into positions of governmental authority, that's where it really becomes something of an urgent matter to get our attention.
It does. We forgot about Casey Means, who was nominated as the Surgeon General, right? The physician who dropped out of residency. Residency stressful, that's fine. You can drop out if you want, but she dropped out and then became a health influencer, sells wearables that measure blood glucose in people without diabetes. For hundreds of dollars, you can measure your blood sugar. And if you're not a diabetic, there's really no benefit in measuring your blood sugar, but she's made millions of dollars off of this. And now they're going to try to lift her up to be the top doctor, the spokesperson for medical advice from physicians in this country, who has no place being there. Her brother, good buddies with JD Vance, and on that team, Callie Means. It's just, again, it seems to be not just about some deep-rooted feeling about how medicine should be practiced. It's something about they're making money off this somewhere, and these folks seem to be making it in that wellness MAHA space.
So the degrading of these important health institutions, the FDA, the CDC, NIH, the cancer experimental programs that had the plug pulled, and I think a couple of the plugs were plugged back in. I mean, it was sort of there's a chaos and an amateurism to all of this, Dr. Rob, and I'm wondering if you can tell us two things. From a bottom line standpoint, how badly degraded are we, and where are we likely to get in the next 3 years? And also the money, the degree to which these government recommendations affect our ability to get stuff paid for by insurance.
Right. Yeah. If they don't recommend vaccines on a schedule, insurance doesn't have to pay for them. Right. And
Exactly.
so it's hard enough with all the disinformation to convince parents that those vaccines that we know are safe, we know are effective, we know prevent disease and disability. Hard enough to convince some people because they're hearing so much in so many different places that's disinformation. But now if you tell them they have to pay for it, it's not going to be something covered. That's a huge barrier. The cost of healthcare is a massive barrier. This Republican Congress and Trump have made it worse with the big bill that they passed, and millions of people. They're trying to make it worse by not extending the premium tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, and another 4 million people likely to lose insurance. But again, at the root of all these recommendations, insurance companies can then just sort of step away and say, well,
if these aren't recommended, we don't have to cover. We don't know what they will do in the end. I just haven't known an insurance company that has worked, as a benevolent player on behalf of their patients. These are profit-driven industries, right? So
Sure, they're
they'd
looking
rather
for any
pay
exit
less.
they can take to not pay.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as far as the degradation of the whole system, I mean, it is jarring to see what they've done in such a short time. And the fact that to build this back doesn't just happen in a few years, right? If we have 4 years of damage, we don't build it back in 4 more years. This is generational. When you pull money from research, pediatric cancer research, basic infectious disease research, avian flu vaccine research, mRNA vaccine research, an absolute godsend. When you do that, it doesn't just turn back on. And the people who do that research are leaving. They're not coming here, right? The HB1 visa scheme that they laid out is going to make it harder. But just the fact that those streams of funding for the basic research are under attack, or they're here and they're there and they're coming and they're going, and people are getting whiplash at whether or not they're going to get the research funded, they're just going to go somewhere else. They're going to find other countries, other places where they can do this research. Those will be the wells of opportunity of all of this. Hopefully we can benefit from that as a part of a global community, but we've pulled ourselves out of the global health community.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we used to really be
that's
the
going to
lead.
take some. Yeah,
I
we
didn't
used
interrupt.
to
I was just
lead.
going to say we used to be the leadership in this area. I mean, scientists and researchers came from all around the world to America. We really were the clearinghouse for some cutting edge technologies and related to medicine. And now, as you say, there's been a brain drain, and the new visa complications, they're super expensive. The new immigration policies have made life incredibly difficult for some of these researchers. I mean, the high profile cases, the one researcher coming in with the frog embryos that she was told to bring in, and and then they end up shipping her off to Louisiana to an immigration detention facility for 2 weeks. I mean, this is going to have a chilling effect. So yeah, you're
It
right.
is.
Yeah.
But there's hope. I mean, I will tell you, when you mentioned the Committee to Protect Healthcare organization, 37,000 doctors around the country who have stood up and continue to stand up to push back, who are practicing good medicine in their communities, the Western Health Alliance of states that are kind of acting as a de facto CDC for the West. We have New England states banding together. I know J.D. Pritzker in Illinois, Governor Whitmer here in Michigan have kind of stood up and stood out and said, we will make the COVID vaccines and other vaccines available. So there is hope, right? We need to look to those leaders, maybe more locally, look to the doctors in the communities, know that organizations like ours and the professional societies like the American Academy of Pediatrics and all, we are all still standing up for what is right, what is just, and going to stand up for our patients. So I don't think we should have all despair. I think there's a big fight ahead. And there is definitely damage being done, but we can withstand that and we can build it back.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I was going to ask you, really, you're part of a lobbying group that has made a difference and makes some noise. And I also was going to ask you, sort of adjacent to that, and maybe cracks of light in some of the darkness. It seems, and this is the stuff you follow so closely, that RFK Jr. has made some big pronouncements, put some people in charge, gotten rid of others that all reflect a kind of horror show that's going on there. But then he takes a step back, and then he rehires some people, and then they waffle on the vaccine recommendations that they were so stern about on the prior week. Tell me where that kind of pencils out.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, these people that went to ACIP, not all of them were steadfast anti-vax, MAHA, at the center of that movement, and so I think the folks that come in and look at the real data, the real information, realize that no one has been out there, feeding us, peddling lies to us for nefarious reasons. I think they take a little bit of a step back. I'm not sure if RFK Jr. will have any of those misgivings, but perhaps the sort of career-minded and people who actually are in this to help people can push back and are pushing back from within.
Well, I was also thinking, Dr. Rob,
hope.
about the measles outbreak now. I feel like RFK Jr. is beginning to blink on the measles vaccine. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it sure seems like it. Statements that he said certainly seem like he is not going all in against MMR as he has before, because we have seen this year this explosion of cases, and the more that happens, it's getting out there, right? People see it in their communities. People are seeing it on the news. he can't hide from it, right? It was sort of an academic exercise previously. Now it's real life, real world. Also, I mean, our own president, they put out a release that he got his flu shot and his COVID booster,
I saw
just
that.
this
Yeah.
past week. I mean, so
Yeah.
you can't make this shit up that they're out there denigrating this vaccine, and
Oh.
and yet the president obviously supports it, endorses it. He's the guy who got it for us. Should be talking about that every day. Inexplicably is not, but that should be an endorsement of that process.
Yeah.
And it's hard for RFK to hide from that one.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I noticed the same thing when it happened. Hey, we're going to put a link to Paging America, which you co-host, and love the activism, love that you keep us posted on all of this, and you're just you're one of the good guys fighting an uphill struggle. But as you say, you're joined by a lot of other good guys, so we really appreciate you.
Absolutely appreciate you. Appreciate the platform. Happy to come back anytime. Thanks.
Look forward to the next time, Dr. Rob. Dr. Rob, everybody. Dr. Rob Davidson. Thanks, my friend.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great, baby.
Let me kick down the door and talk to my cheap sons and daughters.
No context will suffice to explain the hurt and anguish caused by my words. I apologize to all who have been hurt.
I stand corrected. I misspoke. My words upset so many people.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
God bless America. The end.
There's never been anything like this. Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who is having that conversation?
It's fantastic.
That's not fake. That's real.
The science is ridiculous.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
If you get it in order, you get extra points.
Listen to me. I don't want to hear you.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
There is no defense for my conduct. It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Don't ever use that word.
You get nothing.
What's a guilty pleasure you have?
Seriously, what the
And it is the Mark Thompson Show on Wednesdays. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to get to sit in, because I know what happens. Our presidential historian, our political analyst, our former colleague from KGO Radio, John Rothmann, joins the show. Hi, John Rothmann.
Hi, Kim. I'm honored to be with you.
So I'm talking to you just a few hours before the showtime, and because you're going traveling off to see the world, and I'm really grateful.
I will be. Let me tell you, I'm going to Texas.
Okay.
I'm stopping at the Lyndon Johnson Presidential Library, at the George H.W. Bush Library, and the George W. Bush Library. So I'm very excited. It'll be a full-on presidential tour.
It's going to be wonderful. But I'm grateful that I get a hold of you tonight, because a lot has been going on in Israel, Gaza, with this conflict, and now the peace deal. And it's a region and a topic that you are extremely knowledgeable about. And it's kind of caused a little, I don't know, stress this week. Mark and I had a bit of a disagreement, and I think he's probably right, but I want to ask you about your thoughts. Is President Trump to be celebrated, lauded for this peace deal? And is anyone else deserving of accolades as far as making this happen?
First of all, it's not a peace deal. It is a ceasefire agreement which resulted in the release of 20 living Israeli hostages and the return of the bodies of others.
So I thought it was a 20-point peace plan.
Yes, but Hamas hasn't agreed to all 20 points.
Okay.
And it's very important to point out there was violence today caused by Hamas, that the Israeli goal was the release of all the hostages. And that was the goal of Donald Trump and his team. And his team deserves great credit for what they did. But I want to be clear, it is not peace. It is an agreement to get the hostages out.
And that seems like it's been done for the most part. I understand that there are still some bodies that are of people that did not survive being taken hostage that have to be given back to Israel. And I don't know on the other side if there are other people that are still to be released.
No,
but
it's only the 20 hostages, the bodies of those who were killed. Hamas is now moving to return those. Some were returned today. The Palestinians received an agreement, and many of those who were in Israeli prisons have now been released. There was a great deal of angst about that. Some of the key figures, including Marwan Barghouti, were not released, and that was a demand the Israelis had. But in the end, the important element, the most important single thing is that the hostages are out. And I want to draw this analogy. We Americans were held hostage by Iran for 444 days. The Israelis felt they were hostages, and they were, for 737 days. It is very important to understand that in Israel, everybody knows everybody else. It wasn't the impersonal hostages of America's situation, but you understand that in Israel, there was a general rejoicing, and they credit fully the efforts of Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff and Marco Rubio to ensure the release of these hostages. I cannot begin to tell you the feeling of euphoria that gripped Israel, tempered with the knowledge that 2,000 Israelis were killed by Hamas, tempered with the knowledge that, in a sense, it's a deal designed to get hostages out, and that's what happened. That's the bottom line, pure and simple.
Mark said something the other day about President Trump being uniquely made for this moment. And he said he didn't think that President Biden nor former Vice President Kamala Harris would have been able to secure this type of deal. And I was thinking about all the diplomats in the State Department that have been working on this for so long. Other countries involved. Canada has been given credit. The UK, also other countries in the Middle East, Qatar, Egypt. Do you think this is sole credit goes to Trump and his administration on this, or do you see that maybe it's a possibly more of a shared celebration for all those involved?
I give full credit to Donald Trump. I think his tactics, his direction, what he demanded, his ability to put together a coalition, very similar, I might add, to what George W. Bush did after the attack on September the 11th. The idea of being able to put together a coalition of nations. Now, the question you're asking about Joe Biden, more hostages were released when Biden was president. And you remember the hostage exchange. But I want everybody to understand very clearly that what was accomplished by Donald Trump and his administration is the release of the final 20 living hostages. The euphoria that gripped Israel, and you heard it in the Israeli parliament. Let me explain that Joe Biden was viewed as a great friend of Israel. Joe Biden declared himself a Zionist. Joe Biden was responsible for the release of most of the hostages. But what Donald Trump did was to finish the job, to make sure that the 20 living hostages would be returned. And it was very important in Israel that those who were murdered
who were still, their bodies were still there, were returned as well. And so he deserves the credit. And the next question you should ask me is, does he deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? And the answer is absolutely 100% yes.
Wow.
And let me be clear. I am not a fan of Donald Trump's. I don't like Donald Trump's presidency at all. But in this case, he was able to pull something off which is absolutely astounding. And I said before, I don't believe it's a peace deal, but what it does do is to take the hostage equation out. Now, you pointed out to me in our brief discussion before we went on the air that Hamas is already killing people. They're already responding with violence. Because
Well, I'll read you what I had from in the newscast yesterday, that there are at least 6 people dead after the Israeli Defense Forces opened fire in Gaza, opened fire on several suspects approaching troop positions in northern Gaza. So they're urging residents in Gaza to follow instructions, keep their distance from IDF troops. President Trump is warning the United States will get involved if Hamas doesn't disarm. He told reporters that if Hamas doesn't disarm, in his words, we will disarm them. So I don't know if that means American troops will be getting involved or what happens, but this doesn't sound very peaceful.
There are American troops being brought in to enforce the entire deal. But again, I want to say, and I'm saying this with very measured terms, it is not a peace deal.
Yeah.
It is a ceasefire which allowed for the release of living hostages and the return of the dead. What the Palestinians got in return was the release of prisoners from Israeli jails. But let me be clear. Hamas has not recognized Israel's right to exist. Hamas has not agreed to lay down its arms. Hamas is taking revenge against those who they feel collaborated with Israel. And the problem is not resolved. Why do I give Donald Trump credit? Because, frankly, very few people believed that those 20 hostages still living would ever see the light of day. And in Israel, they are rejoicing and giving Donald Trump full credit. You might not agree with Donald Trump, and I certainly don't, on much of what he does domestically. I don't even agree with him on much of what he does in terms of foreign policy. And those of you who have listened to me over the years on KGO and here with you and in my own podcasts, I am highly critical of Donald Trump, but he pulled something off that is exceptional. And let me be clear, this is as historic a moment as when Arafat and Rabin and Perez shook hands on the White House lawn. That was not initiated by Bill Clinton, by the way, but it took place on the White House lawn. But let me point out, even that moment, which was a remarkable moment, or when Sadat came to Jerusalem with Menachem Begin, these were moments. They did not bring full comprehensive peace. And I think that is what is so elusive. When Donald Trump threatens to disarm Hamas, I'm very skeptical. I don't think that Donald Trump wants to get into a ground war in which he is actually asserting American force against Hamas. Why? Well, the Israelis learned the same lesson. You can beat them down, but you can't destroy an idea. And the Hamas idea is the obliteration, the destruction of Israel. And the Israelis will never accept that. But now we take a deep breath and we pause and we say, 20 hostages are out. I don't know about you. I watched the family reunifications. And by the way,
It's emotional. It's humanity at its,
I watched as the Palestinians
Yep.
were let go. These are moments for which Donald Trump deserves great credit. And he will be recognized when the history of his administration is written for that credit. Similar, let me just tell you, similar to Richard Nixon. Everyone talks about Watergate. Richard Nixon opened the door to China. Nixon was the one who initiated détente with the Soviet Union. There are things that presidents do which
are overwhelming in their scope. It doesn't mean you excuse other issues.
Mhm.
And if you want, we can go into my real criticisms of Donald Trump, who I think is the worst president in many ways in American history. Certainly,
Yeah.
he's a threat to democracy, and I've said that repeatedly. But in this case, at this moment, he deserves full credit. In Hebrew, there's an expression, kol hakavod, kol meaning all, honor to. And that is what the Israelis are extending now to Donald Trump. All honor to Donald Trump for having succeeded in really doing an amazing thing.
We were earlier talking about why he was successful, and you said he's successful because he's a bully.
That's correct. He bullies leaders, nations, people to conform to what he wants. That's his method. It isn't necessarily a bad method, although you can say that when he has used these tactics as he is using them now in the United States of America, it's terrible. But in this case, look, he was able to assemble world leaders from diverse views to come to Sharm el-Sheikh to basically not so much sign an agreement, but as to have an agreement that what Donald Trump did was the right thing. It is an important point, and let me remind people again, this is not the first time in history when an American president and the power of the presidency has been used. I think of George W. Bush. I will be at his presidential library in just a few days, and I can tell you that George W. Bush put together a coalition of nations after we were attacked on September 11th, very similar to what Donald Trump did to end this hostage crisis. And please note, I am saying again, a hostage crisis, which he was able not to solve for full peace, but to get 20 individuals out.
You say this isn't a peace deal, that it's a hostage deal. But do you feel like we have a shot, the world has a shot at lasting peace in this region in my lifetime? And you mentioned President Clinton, President Obama was working on Middle East peace, Carter, Bush the second, right? You've seen these deals, these handshakes, these moments that are supposed to be historic. And now we have another one, but it seems like every time there's some type of deal, you turn around and there's another war, there's another skirmish, which leads to something larger. And I'm wondering if you think that even though you say this isn't a peace deal, if there might be hope in this case.
No, I don't believe so, because the fundamental issues are not resolved. Hamas and the radical Palestinians object to Israel's very existence. They are determined to destroy Israel. They make that plain. The Israelis are determined to survive. They are not going to roll over and play dead. Part of the reason this deal happened is because of what Israel did militarily. It took out the Iranian nuclear capability, at least for the time being. It destroyed Hezbollah in Lebanon, and that was a major blow to Iran. It removed the threat of Hamas from striking again, and the Israelis hit very hard. And the Houthis in Yemen, who represent, again, a major problem, the Israelis have hit them. You must understand that what was accomplished by Donald Trump could not have been accomplished without what Benjamin Netanyahu, as Prime Minister of Israel, directed his army to do.
Mm-hmm.
If Iran still had a nuclear capability, there would have been no deal at all. If Hezbollah had fired rockets on October the 6th and 7th, which was what was intended on October 7th, and they didn't, now, in retrospect, a huge mistake, because in the end, Israel destroyed them anyway. Mm-hmm. So what you had was a combination of factors. And to Donald Trump's credit, he's taken advantage of the moment. He's bullied nations in such a fashion that nations who I never thought would have stood up are now standing up. And I don't mean bullied in a negative sense at all. I want you to understand, sometimes the tactic of being a strong president, of asserting authority, makes a huge difference. But I do want to point out that when Sadat came to Jerusalem and shook the hand of Menachem Begin, many people believed that peace was at hand. That when the Oslo agreement was reached, Rabin, Peres, Arafat, and when they received, by the way, the Nobel Prize for Peace, there have been moments when everyone believed it would work. Now, Donald Trump referred to a new Middle East. There is a book by Shimon Peres of that title. I have it right here on the shelf. The New Middle East, because that was the premise once Yasser Arafat shook the hand of Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres. There is a simple reality, and that is the passions are high.
Yeah.
The willingness to agree to a full comprehensive peace is necessary, but as long as there is a feeling on the radical Arab point of view and Hamas and many in the Palestinian national movement of never recognizing Israel's right to exist, the Israelis are going to continue to have to fight. And as for the Palestinians, no one, and I want to underline this, is talking about an independent Palestinian state, because everybody understands that if there were an independent Palestinian state on the West Bank and there were free democratic elections, Hamas would win. You know, Mahmoud Abbas is 88 years old. He's not in good health, and the Palestinian Authority is thoroughly corrupt. So you have to have a party with whom you can deal. And I would suggest to you that at this point in time, Hamas is not that party. And you will note that the United States and our coalition partners are saying we won't deal with Hamas. So that's the other great question. Who do the Israelis and the Americans deal with? And Mahmoud Abbas, you will recall, we, the United States, would not grant him a visa to come to the United States for the UN General Assembly. On the other hand, he was at Sharm el-Sheikh, so we have to watch and see. I mean, this is not easy. But again, I want to emphasize, it's not peace. It's not even a new Middle East. It is Donald Trump exercising the full power of his presidency and getting the hostages out. And I will tell you, and I believe this, that no matter what happens, he will receive the Nobel Peace Prize.
I have a question about that, but before I ask it, I kind of want to finish this topic by asking you the particulars. If there's any information you have or anything you want to share about how this peace deal came together, whether or not you know or have read or have heard anything about perhaps the United States giving up anything or making separate deals in order to facilitate this, and how it all worked and gelled to kind of get where we are.
Okay, first of all, it's not a peace deal.
Right. I'm sorry. I keep saying it.
Take that out of your lexicon.
Got it.
That's a ding word if anybody's listening.
We'll ding it.
It was a deal to secure the release of 20 hostages.
Right.
Hostage release. Those Israelis who were killed. And everyone agreed that that was necessary to begin a process. Let me tell you what wasn't identified. Who will rule Gaza? Who will the Palestinians have as their leadership? The president says he is going to chair a so-called Council of Peace. It'll be very interesting to see how that evolves, because Gaza is ungovernable on so many different levels. And where is the money going to come from to rebuild Gaza? This is another great question. And of course, what about the Arab world itself? Will they participate in this effort? And how the Palestinians themselves regard this? Look, this is not easy for me to say that I give Donald Trump full credit. I give him full credit for this. As you can give Richard Nixon full credit for going to China, as you can give full credit to Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat for shaking hands and the peace treaty with Egypt, which has lasted. There are a lot of elements here. So credit where credit is due. And let me tell you, I've gotten a lot of emails blasting me for giving Donald Trump any credit at all. But he deserves it. and he will be recognized in history for that thing. One other quick point. Nixon will always be credited with opening the door to China. Nixon will also always be credited with détente. He'll be credited with the creation of the war on cancer. He'll be credited with setting up the Environmental Protection Agency. There are many things for which Richard Nixon will receive full credit. It does not diminish the reality of what Nixon did in Watergate and in other abuses of power. So I know it's hard for people to bifurcate. It's hard for people to separate, but we have to. So I participate every year in the Writings McIver survey. You've heard me interview Bill Writings on KGO many times. And there are 5 different categories. The president can rank in the lowest category in one element and the highest category in another. And that will be the way the Trump administration will have to be judged, the same as our judgment about Richard Nixon or any other American president.
So you said, and we'll go back to this now, that you think that because of this hostage release, I won't call it a peace deal again, although I will say at the bottom here, celebrating Trump as a peacemaker, you say that you think he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for his role in this hostage release. Do you think that Nobel Peace Prize should be given for one event, or do you think next year they look at the presidency as a whole? Perhaps there are lives saved because of we know there are lives saved because of this hostage release. But what if there are more lives taken in the United States because of what's happening with brutal ICE enforcement? What if there are more lives taken with potentially unfounded claims of boats being blown up that are drug boats? Perhaps they are, perhaps they're not. We don't know whether they are, and people are dying. Perhaps there will be people who will die because they're arrested at No Kings rallies or subject to brutal violence when a possible insurrection act is invoked.
I agree. I agree with everything you've said.
But what I'm saying is, can you separate that when you give a Nobel Peace Prize for someone who, on one hand, has saved lives, and on the other hand, has caused incredible turmoil, violence, and possible death?
Should Yasser Arafat have received the Nobel Peace Prize, the man who was the most notorious terrorist in modern times, and yet one single action by Arafat caused him to receive the Nobel Peace Prize? Was it right or wrong? It is an ongoing debate. And all I can tell you is January 1st is the deadline for nominations. We are now approaching January 1st, just a couple of months away. And there is no doubt that Donald Trump will be nominated, and there is no doubt that there will be opposition to his receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. But I want again to demonstrate to you that someone who was once viewed as the arch terrorist in the world received the Nobel Peace Prize. I want to remind you, Menachem Begin was viewed by many as a terrorist. He received the Nobel Peace Prize. I want to remind you, Anwar Sadat was the man who initiated a war in October of 1973. And yet, just a few years later, he received the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Committee clearly doesn't like Donald Trump. So it's all speculation.
Yeah,
but he'll be considered for sure.
It is really hard to separate that anger as an American when you look around at what's happening to our country and celebrate anything about him, even though I'm delighted that people are free and that they're, that this horrible ordeal that they had faced has come to at least a physical end for them, if not emotional.
Yeah, let me remind you, Barack Obama received the Nobel Peace Prize for a single speech, a speech delivered in Cairo. I analyzed it thoroughly on KGO. The speech did not result in a change per se, but it was acknowledged as a moment in time. And I would suggest to you that is precisely how Donald Trump will be viewed. A moment in time.
Can we move to the National Guard troops and their potential infiltration or, I don't know, deployment to Portland, Oregon, to Chicago, Illinois? Those two deployments have been put on hold by the courts as they look at whether there's enough evidence to see if there's really some type of insurrection happening. And your thoughts on this and the possibility of an insurrection being enacted?
Okay, first of all, let me point out that Mark Benioff in the New York Times
Yeah.
last weekend proposed that National Guard be deployed in San Francisco. In San Francisco.
Yeah.
I find everything that Donald Trump is doing to be abhorrent. There is no insurrection in Portland, Oregon. There is no insurrection in San Francisco. There is no insurrection in Los Angeles. Donald Trump doesn't care. He's using the National Guard as he chooses. Now, one can ask, why didn't he deploy the National Guard on January 6th? And the answer is, he says, that was Nancy Pelosi's job. Completely untrue. But Donald Trump is not someone who necessarily deals in truth. I don't want to shock you when I say that, but you know it's true. The courts have stood in the way of Donald Trump so far. But all of these cases are going to go to the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And let me point out to you that there are two justices on the court, Alito and Thomas, who are going to vote to uphold Donald Trump no matter what. There are two justices on the United States Supreme Court who are swing votes. They are the Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. There are three liberal justices on the court who will almost certainly declare Donald Trump to be wrong on almost every point. And the balance will vote generally in a conservative line. I would suggest to you the Supreme Court could vote 5-4 on major issues in terms of a president's power. So when I look at the courts and the highly partisan nature of the courts, and then I understand. You know that Justice Anthony Kennedy gave an interview in the last day or so to CBS, and he was very critical of the court because he said it has become too partisan. Well, there's no doubt about it. I have never seen a partisan division on the court like this. And Donald Trump is placing his money, if you will, clear bet that in the end, the Supreme Court will uphold his position. He believes that. That is the strategy of the Federalist Society. They are saying to him, do what you want. And there is another point, and let me quickly point this out. When the United States voted, when the Supreme Court voted against Richard Nixon, ordering the release of the tapes, 8 voted against him and 1 was recused. That was Bill Rehnquist, who claimed he knew everybody. Let me point out to you that Nixon had put 4 justices on the court. He counted on having at least 3 vote to uphold executive privilege. He didn't succeed, but we don't have on this court the kind of flexibility that we had when Nixon was president. So the Supreme Court is meeting now. They're in session. They reconvened the first Monday in October. Many of these cases are being fast-tracked. And I want to remind you that Portland, Oregon is one of the cases which the Supreme Court is considering. And so it's going to be interesting. Let me also just reflect with you that here in San Francisco, where I sit, that the mayor, the district attorney, certainly the members of the Board of Supervisors are all opposed to any federal intervention on the streets of San Francisco. But ultimately, if Donald Trump were to decide to deploy, he has the power to do it, and only the Supreme Court would have the ability to stop him. That's what Portland is going after right now. What if he invokes the Insurrection Act?
Yeah.
This is profoundly disturbing because if you understand the Insurrection Act, you understand that if the president invokes it, essentially he sidelines the courts unless the Supreme Court directly intervenes. But the federal district courts sideline. So this is a very dangerous moment for American democracy. There was a novel written when Richard Nixon was president called Takeover. Nobody remembers it but me. But it suggested that dark side. And Nixon believed that if the Supreme Court split on the question of executive privilege, he could defy the court. It was the unanimous decision of the court with the one recusal. He had no choice. But what if the court divides on a 5-4 vote? What happens then? Does the president have the power to simply say, it's a divided court, I'm the president? And if you understand the idea of a unitary presidency, which is promulgated by Trump and Project 2025, which, by the way, he denied knowing about before the election and now is embraced fully.
It's a playbook, right?
Yeah. So these are all factors in terms of domestic politics that need to be taken into account. May I also point out that the president has wide discretion. We are now in the third week of a government shutdown.
Yeah.
The president is ordering massive layoffs of what he calls Democrat programs, Democrat people. This is something that every American should be very concerned about. I have never witnessed this kind of partisan action by a president of the United States. And what Donald Trump has demonstrated in the Middle East and beyond is this power. Let me tell you, he is meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday at the White House. Will he give, and I'm saying this, will he give Zelensky Tomahawk missiles? And what are the implications of that? And I'm pointing this out to you because when it comes to foreign policy, a president is a king. And when it comes to certain aspects of domestic policy, we are now witnessing a president of the United States who does not rule by Congress, with Congress, but rules by executive order. And I want to point out to you that the House of Representatives, as of this moment, is not in session. And the Speaker of the House is keeping the House out, which means that the one new member of Congress elected, who happens to be a Democrat, cannot be seated. And so when it comes to the Epstein case, the 218 votes required to release this absolutely will not happen until Congress reconvenes.
Let's go back.
I'm sorry to throw all this out. But
that's okay. I kind of want to go back to the Insurrection Act. I'm super concerned, as are you, about that. And I wonder, it feels like we're at his mercy, that should such an act be invoked, that there's really not much we can do. What do you see the best response from the American public being? Is that a moment to protest? Or if there's an Insurrection Act, are we all at risk of being killed or jailed or what have you? How do we respond to something like that as Americans?
We have to count on the court. We have to count on the Supreme Court ruling that there is no insurrection. And let me assure you,
we already know they won't be there for us, John. They're not.
We don't know. We do not know at this point. Let me point out the president has made statements that are completely false. Portland was not and is not burning. Los Angeles wasn't burning down.
No.
We understand that this president's language will also be clearly subject to discussion. And I understand all of the reasons why you are skeptical and why I might be skeptical, which is why I broke down how the Supreme Court might vote. But in the end, the only thing that separates this country from a virtual dictatorship is the court. And we have to hope that as the lower courts react, and as the Supreme Court then must react, that they will do the right thing. If they don't, the whole nature of the American Republic changes.
Yes.
And I shudder at the thought.
Let's move on to Trump's retribution tour. The latest to be in the sights is John Bolton, who has not been charged with any crime. His lawyer says he didn't do anything appropriate in his home or have anything inappropriate in his home or his office after his federal government service. But he's now they're looking at some notes that he was making to himself in an AOL email account, writing summaries of his
diary.
activities, keeping a diary of what happened.
Keeping a diary
while he was Trump's national security advisor and Trump Part 1, as Mark would say. I mean, it seems silly, but you have Bolton, likely Schiff is coming up as far as someone who's, they're trying to target for mortgage fraud. Letitia James now facing charges. All of Trump's, and I'm leaving Comey. You have this, he's angry at people that were not loyal to him, and he is now out for blood. And I just, it's frustrating to see these people that are unfairly targeted. And I don't know, I don't know what we do about that unless we just recognize that, that they're not criminals. But that doesn't do them any good when they're in jail, does it?
Well, let me point out to you, this is a campaign of retribution. I've told the story before the election. I sat with a very good friend of mine who assured me he was voting for Trump and there would be no retribution. It was pure election rhetoric. Well, we now know that Donald Trump was serious and that the Justice Department has been weaponized for the purpose of retribution. Pam Bondi, it's a disgrace. I mean, what can I tell you? I listened to her the other day and I couldn't believe what I was listening to. It makes my old friend John Mitchell sound like a saint. So, John Mitchell was Nixon's attorney general. I just want to point out to you, this is the darkest of the dark side of Donald Trump. And retribution is a terrible, terrible thing. Look what he's doing now. He's eliminating what he calls personnel who are working in Democrat programs.
Yeah.
For a president of the United States to have that kind of power, and that's what this shutdown gives the president. I am terrified, horrified, appalled, and I'm sorry that the Republicans do not have the guts to stand up and confront this man. He needs to be confronted. I expect John Bolton will be indicted. I expect that this is going to be a serious question. Now, the good news for Jim Comey is that he says he wants a speedy trial. And let me tell you, whatever the decision is, ultimately will be appealed to the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So do you remember, Kim, in all the elections I covered for KGO, and I started in 1996 covering for KGO, I said we are not just electing a president. We are electing the future of the Supreme Court, the district courts, and the appellate courts. That is precisely correct. I always remember Shirley Breyer Black, who was Steve Breyer's aunt and who passed away several years ago. I actually had her on the air at one point, who pointed out that if Al Gore had won the election and become president in 2000, it would have been the Breyer court, and the whole direction of the American justice system would have been different. And that is absolutely true. Donald Trump now is putting people on the court who will be there for years and years. He's choosing younger, hardline, ideological conservatives. And frankly, he's packing the courts. And the legacy of Donald Trump, when he is long gone, and even if a Democrat is president, will be felt in these lower courts.
It's
and
true.
Donald Trump has placed a bet. He believes that the courts in the end will side with him.
Let's move to California and redistricting, gerrymandering. Prop 50 voting is underway in California. My ballot has been turned in, and I know you said that you voted as well. The advertisements are coming in the mail, and they're coming on YouTube, and they're coming on TV and Facebook. How do you think this is going to shake out here in California?
Okay, first of all, let me point out that I supported Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was governor in the creation of the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Their power was to draw congressional districts. I did it because I worked for Milton Marks when Milton was a member of the state Senate, who was in charge of redistricting in 1980, I believe, either 80 or 90. It happened twice. And I learned the corruption within that system. What Prop 50 does is to allow us to balance Donald Trump's plan, and he drew the plan for Texas, which would create 5 new congressional districts, which theoretically would be Republican.
Mm-hmm.
The answer was by Gavin Newsom, who is running for president. And Gavin Newsom said, we'll do the same thing in California. We'll create 5 new Democratic districts. And of course, it's happening in other states, as you are aware. Every day we get reports of different actions. But the important thing with Prop 50 is it would allow a one-time situation, because in 2030, when redistricting takes place again, the Citizens Redistricting Commission would be restored. I debated with myself. I really did. I argued with myself, and I was finally compelled to say that I am voting yes on 50. I am voting yes on 50, not because I like it, but because if the Republicans are able to redistrict Texas and there is no counterbalance, then the Republicans will retain control of the House of Representatives. And that, to me, would be very unfortunate.
I looked at it, and my husband and I had this discussion about about how to vote, how you could vote no on this, because what other alternative is being offered? There is no other alternative. Either you vote yes on it, or you say, all right, Republicans, have your way with the midterms. We get that you're going to win it because you've managed to arrange it in such a way. You've managed.
Well, if I had been at
fix
your
it.
dining room table, I would have
Mhm.
explained that Arnold Schwarzenegger, the former governor, is leading the battle against Prop 50.
I saw it. I have the form or the
And
mailer.
his reasoning is that if 50 passes,
Mhm.
it will change forever
It
what
won't,
he
though.
tried to achieve with the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission.
But it's
He's
temporary,
not,
right?
that's right.
Yeah.
It's only for this election. So I decided, after debating myself, and believe me, it was a wonderful argument. And I'm equally persuasive either way. I finally decided the most important single thing is to vote yes on 50 to stop Donald Trump.
Right.
Otherwise, the Republicans will most assuredly control the House of Representatives for another, indefinite period of time.
And if there was some alternative, some legal alternative, some other way of getting this done rather than, taking this independent commission away, then bring it and show it to me. But
There
right
is no
now,
other way.
I don't
This
see
is
that
the-
there is. This is it. This is
This is
the
the
only
choice.
shot. Yeah.
Now, let me predict to you that
Okay.
California will vote overwhelmingly yes on 50.
What's interesting that you say that, because it seems like the messaging online and in my mailbox has been predominantly mailers saying no.
Yeah, I have some of the mailers. I could hold them up. I have them right here in
Yeah.
my hand. I can tell you that my sense is that the revulsion against Donald Trump
Mhm.
in California, and we haven't gotten into the whole thing with ICE and the whole business going on now, is so great that because it is a temporary action, only good till the next redistricting. And remember, this redistricting is unprecedented. We've always done it every 10 years. But Texas chose, at Donald Trump's instigation, to redistrict now in order to give Trump additional seats in the House, or the Republicans, that is. And this is the alternative. The Democrats have seized the initiative. And for Governor Newsom, who plans to run for president, a resounding victory on Prop 50 will be a stimulus to his presidential campaign in 2028.
Tuesday at the White House, the late conservative activist Charlie Kirk was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. There is an article this last night that I saw that said the United States is now revoking visas for 6 foreigners over Charlie Kirk-related speech online, pulling those visas. They determined that these people should lose their visas and their ability to be in America after reviewing their online social media posts and clips about Kirk, who was killed September 10th on a college campus. How did we get to a place where a person, a social media advocate for MAGA, is raised to the point of honor that free speech is tamped down, that people
Because
are kicked
Donald
out of the
Trump,
country, that people are fired, that all these things happen, and just support of one person?
because Donald Trump is president. Donald Trump has so politicized the political climate, I cannot even begin to tell you. Was the speaker, the former Speaker of the House, who was gunned down in her home with her husband, was that recognized by Donald Trump? No.
In Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah, Donald Trump's position is a clear one. He views this as a war for what he wants to achieve. And Charlie Kirk helped him win re-election in 2024. And Charlie Kirk's legacy is in support of Donald Trump. Nothing that Donald Trump does surprises me. Let me tell you the difference. Do you remember when Barack Obama gave John McCain the Medal of Freedom? Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Mm-hmm.
That was true bipartisanship. I remember when Bill Clinton did the same thing for Bob Dole. This is a different kind of president. This is a president, and he said it again today. I listened to the ceremony. He talked about how Charlie Kirk loved his enemies. And Donald Trump repeated for the second time, I hate my enemies. I hate them.
Mm-hmm.
We have never had a president of the United States who makes those kinds of statements. It is horrifying to me, as somebody who has studied the American presidency, believes in the American system, that we have a president of the United States who is, frankly, out of control. And I believe this is very important. I know that you will probably play a little bit of the interview that Barack Obama gave about democracy, the wheels of democracy being off the road. I mean, it is so shocking, so appalling to me to hear what Donald Trump does and says. And it's not every so often. It's every single day.
Yes, it is.
It violates every norm. How will midterm election voters judge this? Will there be some Republicans who say enough is enough? And let me ask you, where is the Republican anger over the fact that the House of Representatives is not being called into session? Why? Because they will then have the 218 votes to get an up-down vote on the floor of the House. This is a discharge resolution dealing with the Epstein case. What are the Republicans afraid of? What is Donald Trump afraid of? And so I'm anxious for the House to reconvene. By the way, the Republicans, what hypocrites. 3 occasions when the same situation occurred, Republican members elect were allowed to take their place. This is unprecedented in the history of the Congress. It is a denial.
When is it legal? Like, when must Grijalva be sworn into office?
As soon as
when
Congress
House
reconvenes.
So they
That's
have
what
to.
he's
The next
saying.
time yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what Speaker Johnson is saying. I believe that is a complete misstatement of fact. As soon as you win an election, you ought to be sworn in. You're denying a district its voice in Congress. This is unprecedented. We've never had this happen in American political history. And although Speaker Johnson is getting away with it, history should and will note this egregious display of contempt for the rules of the House.
We don't see very often now people, corporations, tech companies, universities standing up to Trump or demands from the Trump administration. But it seems like maybe in this one case, maybe there's unity in saying no. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, Department of War, what have you, wants every single reporter covering the Pentagon to sign a statement saying that they will not release or obtain any information that the Defense Department does not expressly allow them to obtain, which means they get to decide what reporters report. They get to decide the news.
I want to ask you, you're a reporter. If you were assigned to the Pentagon, no, you are still a reporter. If you were a Pentagon assigned by our station to the Pentagon, would you have signed such a statement?
Never, no.
Of course.
I mean, it goes against a free press.
And
I
even
might as well.
Fox.
There's a difference between being a reporter and being a spokesperson for the Pentagon. I mean, they have spokespeople for the Pentagon. Call the media department.
Even Fox is refusing.
Yeah.
Even
No.
Fox is refusing to go along with this. There is one right-wing source that says they will agree.
Right.
But this is the unified action of virtually every liberal and conservative source saying they won't sign such a declaration.
The Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, Newsmax, the Washington Times, every major TV network, including, as you say, Fox News, the Huffington Post, everybody saying, except OAN, is saying, we're not going to do that. We're not going to.
What is OAN? Can you tell us what OAN is?
Some type of Christian right-wing network.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is appalling. It's an attack on American democracy. And for those of you who think I'm hysterical, listen to what Fox is saying. Listen to what Newsmax is saying. Listen to what conservative commentators are saying. This is a violation of every norm in America.
Yeah.
And I listened to Wolf Putzer, who was accredited by the Pentagon, describing what he went through during the Gulf War when he was at the Pentagon. He said, this is terrible. This is unprecedented. And so I have to tell you, there are many things that appall me about what the Trump administration is doing. This ranks right up there as being absolutely horrific. And I do believe in free speech, and I do believe in a free press. And if anybody told me that I would have to sign such a document, believe me, I would have refused.
And I think for the most part, trained journalists have been, and maybe you disagree, but I'm looking at the most recent example where Hegseth added the editor of The Atlantic, or a reporter, an editor of The Atlantic, to a Signal chat where they discussed, where they discussed a military action. At that moment, Mr. Goldberg could have immediately released the information, but didn't. Knew enough to hold on to it for a few hours as the operation played out, because people that are trained know that you don't want to put American security, national security at risk, even if there's a story to tell. And so he managed to not shake national security, but also to tell the story. And I think that's important, that you have to respect trained journalists to know the difference.
Yeah, well, Pete Hegseth, who worked for Fox, by the way, who was theoretically a journalist, he's a disgrace. He has no business being, and I want to be clear, he was confirmed as Secretary of Defense. Donald Trump can rename things all he wants, but it is still the Department of Defense, according to American law. And the idea that he believes he has the power to rename the Department of War, or that he has the power to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Well, and you can go down the line of all these sorts of things. It is outrageous. It is egregious. It is wrong. And I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative, a Democrat or a Republican. We have to call this for what it is. Just plain wrong.
last question, because I know I've kept you way long, but I will ask you about the shutdown, about the threats against federal workers and programs that, as you mentioned, Trump called democratic programs or Democrat programs. Speaker Johnson is now saying he won't negotiate with Democrats. He's saying this could be the longest federal government shutdown that we've ever seen. And I don't know how this plays out, how people will be able to survive without certain benefits, federal workers without paychecks, and what this means for America. The longer
it's a
it goes on,
disaster.
the worse it is.
It's terrible. I am supposed to get a refund from the IRS. I talked to my accountant this morning. I'm not going to get the refund quickly and speedily and in our time because of this shutdown. But let me assure you of one thing. The Republicans will feel the heat. They control the House of Representatives. They control the United States Senate. And this shutdown is on them. It's not on the Democrats. And Donald Trump and Speaker Johnson can say over and over again, it's the fault of the Democrat Party. That's what they call it, the Democrat Party. They can't even get the name right. It's the Democratic Party. But let me just be clear. I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow morning, and I almost canceled the trip because how are air traffic controllers going to keep up with everything going on? I'm away for 10 days. I said to my wife, okay, we're going on this trip. We're going to a wedding. We're going to the presidential libraries. I want to make sure I can come home safely. So if I were a federal, yeah, well, thanks. Thank God I have this machine so I can still talk to you and I can still do my daily podcast. I'm taking my equipment with me so that I can continue to do what I do. But it is so shocking to me. And let me just point out quickly again, Donald Trump is waging a war against the University of California.
Yeah.
Look in this last week, how many PhDs at the University of California received the Nobel Prize. And he's waging a war against academia. I am very proud of the fact that 150 Jewish professors at the University of California at Berkeley issued a statement, a combined statement opposing what Donald Trump is doing to try to use anti-Semitism as a fig leaf cover for what is being done to gut the academic system in this state. Kim, nothing in my life would have ever prepared me for this kind of retribution, this kind of destruction. It is so appalling to me, and it should be to every American. Again, if you're a Trump supporter, you should be just as disturbed as I am. Can you imagine if a Democrat in the White House tried to do what a Republican in the White House is doing now? Why, the Republicans would be up in arms. Yep. It is the hypocrisy that we are witnessing now. So that's my view. It's a real battle. And what will be even more interesting in the weeks ahead is if Donald Trump tries to put troops onto the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah.
By the way, I couldn't believe Mark Benioff, a great philanthropist, would
felt like he really
such
threw the city under the bus, didn't he?
Well, he backed down a little bit and he said, well, what I really mean is we need 1,000 police officers. Well, let me explain something to you. You take a look at the city budget here in San Francisco and the massive deficits we run. That's a pipe dream. And I really believe that this is going to be a major issue, and it's one that needs to be confronted. And by the way, again, this may ultimately go to the courts. So we're watching all of this with great care.
John Rothmann, safe travels. May your air traffic controller show up and your tower be fully staffed. And may you have a wonderful trip. And hopefully we'll see you next week, if not the week after.
And Kim, I want to thank you and Mark for affording me this opportunity. And I want to urge our listeners, do support the Mark Thompson program. Mark and Kim play such a vital role, and keeping the Mark Thompson program going and keeping Kim going, equally important. Thank you.
You can find John Rothman on his daily podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothman. And I believe weekly you do a podcast on the Voice of
daily.
Oh, daily. TheVoiceSF.org. I clearly haven't heard them all. TheVoiceSF.org. I know. I have to go back. Listen to them all.
Yes. By the way, when you go to the Voice of San Francisco, there's a line that says podcasts, and that is where you will hear my podcast.
Excellent.
And I want to thank you again. It was a pleasure, Kim. Best of luck.
Thank you. Bye, John Rothman.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
I misspoke.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Why are you yelling?
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
There's never been anything like this.
We've never seen anything like it before.
Nobody has ever put something like this together that I've ever seen.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
God bless America. The end.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Sayonara, sucker!
You know what, Hal? You created havoc and chaos.
I don't think you should apologize for how you feel.
Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who is having that conversation?
The Mark Thompson Show, and thank you so much for being here. The comments in the chat, absolutely amazing today. Yeah. Good job, everybody. I so appreciate you guys being here. We have Belinda Waymouth here to save the planet. Before I get to her, I want to mention one other story that we just talked to John Rothman about Pete Hegseth and the clamping down of free press. But in addition, there's a clamping down of free speech. Not only is Pete Hegseth making everyone at the Pentagon, all the staff, watch that speech that he gave where he lays out the new policies and, you have to be in shape and you have to do this and they all have to watch it. So it's mandatory viewing and they're not allowed to say anything bad about it either. That's true. They are not allowed to speak negatively at all about the required viewing, the speech that they have to watch. I mean, common for the military, right? The military can't really speak out against the president. They have to keep their opinions to themselves in most cases. That is expected. But that's interesting. There's one Department of Defense staffer who says we're being forced to watch that MAGA garbage. So that's got to be a challenge. Not only do you have to be force-fed this speech, but then whatever opinion you have, you got to keep it to yourself. All right, let's move on. We're saving the planet. It's the planet. Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Our eco-journalist joins us, ready to save the world. Please click the like button for that. If you haven't subscribed, please do it. Welcome, Belinda Waymouth.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I pulled a Mark Thompson and I went a little late to you, but I'm so glad that you're here. Because you have
Right. Well, I hope we are going to have time to save the planet, Kim. I mean, you've really, can I do it in 15 minutes? I don't know that I can.
You can. I believe in you, Belinda. You're a superhero.
Yeah,
and you come bearing good news for us today as well.
Yeah. Well, there's this really cool story out of Michigan. So drones, drones get a bad rap. Is Amazon going to be delivering our parcels and hitting us on the head with, drone, aerial delivery? You hear these awful stories about, drones in warfare and how they can target a person's face and, blah, blah, blah. But what about drones being used for precision agriculture plus precision environmental protection? So this is really, really cool, because what happens with farming is, you have a great big field, you plant your crop of corn or whatever it happens to be, and then you just douse it in all the chemicals you want to, you feel that you have to douse it in. So pesticides, fertilizers, blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing precision about it. It's just a, one size fits all. But we have this guy, Bruno Basso, who has looked at 15 years of satellite imagery over 120 million agricultural acres in 12 different states. And, when you use satellites and you look at a plant, you see where is the plant green? Where is the plant yellow? And as any gardener, I'm a gardener, and I know we've got some gardeners, listening, when your plants are yellow, are they getting too much water? Are they lacking in, some nutrient that they need? So what these drones are doing, they're using AI, satellite imagery and drones, and they're working out where a crop needs fertilizer, where it doesn't need you to put fertilizer on, and then really, really importantly, and this is the conservation piece, and of course this is the one that, I find quite exciting, in my bid to save the planet, where are the crops not doing well? Where did they historically not do well? What's a part of your field where they just don't do that well? And rather than, keeping on planting crops, keeping on putting on expensive nitrogen, which is also, nitrogen, yes, it's, important, component for plants, but it's a pollutant as well. You put on too much, nitrogen fertilizer, which is expensive, where a crop can't, suck it up because it's not a healthy plant. And you either lose that nitrogen, it either leaches into the soil, you get nitrates in drinking water, it gets into the aquifer. That's not good for us. We have nitrate poisoning happening to aquifers in New Zealand because of our, over, dairy farming, practices that we use in farming, but that's another story. But the other thing is you get nitrogen runoff, and that's what causes algal blooms and rivers and lakes. It can also happen when the, too much nitrogen gets into the ocean. And algal blooms when all that algae has sucked up all the nitrogen and grown, and then when it dies, it takes all the oxygen out of the water, so you have a die-off of other species. But the other thing that happens with excess nitrogen, and this is a environmental no-no, it goes back up into the atmosphere as nitrogen gas. Now, yes, we need nitrogen gas. It's the biggest, component of the atmospheric, makeup of gases. But excess nitrogen, not good. It's 300 times stronger than CO2 for trapping heat. So what these drones do is they strategically just put the fertilizer where it's needed. They work out the areas where the crops are not a good idea, and they're planting alternatives, clover, natural grasses that are good for our pollinators, that have flowers. And so you're getting these little ecological conservation areas, in amongst the farms. So it's a win-win. So right now there are 10 farms who are involved in this pilot project. There are 450 acres that are being used for conservation only. So all your little pollinators, and everyone knows, we're having this huge drop off in our pollinators. So in the lower 48, we've lost 22% of our butterflies in the last 20 years. Yeah. You love butterflies, I know, Kim. So this is important to you.
It's true. Yes.
Yeah. Butterflies they're beautiful and they're super important, as are all our pollinators. And so now we've got these little, pockets. And what's interesting is, so farmers who lay aside land for conservation, there's a federal grant. You get $200 an acre a year. And somehow that has missed the Trump cuts. So you can still get it. So these farmers are making money. And the one farmer, and then these 450 acres that are, conserving, that's equivalent to 4,000 tons of CO2 emissions a year, which is equivalent to what 500 homes do. So this is just a pilot project. But if we could increase this across, all of the areas of the states which have, high agricultural, practices going on, this would be a real win. Because the other thing, it's a benefit for us, the rest of us, when less nitrogen is used. The farmers are saving money. There's one farmer who says, in the last 6 years, I've saved $7,000, and I'm, and then I'm making money from, from this conservation of these, fallow. I mean, they're not completely fallow. They plant them with the crops, but the crops don't yield. And then what they worked out was, if he planted a border of clover around his corn, the deer, which would come and eat the corn ordinarily, go, oh, well, we love this clover, munch, munch, munch.
Mm-hmm.
What's good about that is every time the clover gets eaten down and it regrows, sucks more CO2 out of the atmosphere. So that's using regenerative agriculture and regenerative grasslands, as they're called. So I just think, things like this, they don't make big headlines, but they're really important, because everything that we can do to help the environment, to lower emissions, and to give our insects, our pollinators, because we don't have crops, we won't have, healthy corn and all these other things if we don't have our pollinators. So, this is really vital. And the other thing, there's one of the associates of Dr. Basso says, what he's noticing is that the insects actually do better in these little havens that they have sort of dotted about the farms, sometimes than they do in a great big area of, natural species where they can, pollinate and fly around happily. They actually love these little islands, these little havens, they do really well in them. So that is a little eco win for the week.
It is a little eco win for the week. I love it. Oh, there's a picture of a drone. And
Yeah.
it feels like we have to change the way we do things and be innovative if we're going to fight climate change and if we're going to be successful as far as agriculture and many other industries as well. So it's nice to see them taking new technology and turning it in a way to use it to be beneficial to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see Ruben in the chat is saying he's seeing, less monarchs. Just so you know, Ruben, actually monarchs are having a little bit of a comeback.
Oh,
and if
good.
you want to plant some milkweed in your garden, they love it. Plant the native milkweed. You live in Oregon. The one that we have here in California is a white color, the flower. And I have a little monarch farm going most summers. It's kind of amazing. You plant the milkweed, they come and they eat it. So, okay, that's a positive story. We do have a not so great story about what Republicans want to do to the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which is just, insane, I think. But should we go to that?
Yeah, let's do it. This is
All right.
an unfortunate story. Mark actually called my attention to this one, and it's about the attempts to weaken this law that protects whales and polar bears and seals and lovely, wonderful creatures.
Yeah, big marine mammals that we really, the thing about this is it's really crazy because it's really about short-term gain, but long-term loss. Like if we lose the orcas of the west coast of the United States and Canada, we'll be very sad. If we lose the right whales off the east coast, the eastern seaboard, we'll be very sad. But you can't be sad in retrospect once the animal's gone. So what's happened is you've got Republicans really wanting to weaken this act. Now, it came in a year before. It came in 1972, a year before the Endangered Species Act, and it brought species that were on the brink of extinction back. It was a really, really big deal. And now what they want to do is they want to weaken them again. And the thing is, like I said, it's very short term, but it's, you've got crab fishermen in Alaska, you've got in Hawaii, you've got, look at that. How could you resist? How could you want to, put anything in, this guy's path that would be dangerous? Too cute. You've got the tuna fishermen in Hawaii, and you've got lobster fishermen off Maine. And what happens now is that, the fishing industry, they have to be careful about the gear that they use. They have to use equipment that won't entangle big mammals. And shipping lanes and cruise ship lanes. They have to stay out of the paths of where the animals are. So just to give you an example of what's happening to the orcas here, that's the southern 3 pods of orcas that we have. We're down to, how many is it? 74, 72 of them. They are so beleaguered because they literally are trying to feed in a highway. They're trying to go in and get Chinook salmon, but in an absolute highway where they've got these cruise ships, tankers going through. And then the other thing that happens is the Chinook salmon, first of all, the American fishermen are allowed to go, get Chinook salmon, and once they've taken their, the quotas that they're allowed to take, and once the northern pods of orcas have gotten their Chinook salmon, the southern pods, the 3 pods, the 74 individuals, they're sort of left with, the scraps, and they're starving to death. They're inbred because the species, there aren't enough of them. They're not breeding at high enough rates. I mean, they're looking at all the males, and then, lots of them aren't old enough. They don't seem that interested. And, number one, they're hungry. They're inbred. Of the last 4 babies that were born, only 2 survived. So we're really in danger of losing these animals. And what this Republican out of Alaska, what's his name, Nick Begich, I think is how you pronounce his name. So he wants to change the wording in the Marine Protection Act from we don't want to have the populations at a range which supports maximum productivity for them. We want to change that to support continued survival. Well, they're already at this, danger zone. So to say to tankers and cruise ships, have at it, go wherever you want, and to these fishing industries, fish as much as you want. That you're sort of signing the death warrant of these animals. And then the other thing is, the way that it's worded right now, it's like, if there's the potential to injure. So potential to injure is very different. They want to change the wording to actually injure. They want it's that same old American thing. We want to see that there's actual harm before we put any restrictions on our industry. Whereas what we want to do is, have regulations in place to prevent harm, rather than try to fix it afterwards. Because if we leave it to the point where, they show injury, well, then you've killed more whales, and then the whales are even closer to the brink of extinction.
Yeah, it's I want you to be in charge because you make sense. The time to fix the problem isn't after you've done all the damage.
No, because the thing is, these populations are already at such low numbers. I mean, the orcas are already they're not reproducing at a replacement rate. The adults, males, aren't getting to an old enough age to be able to do it. The last one who was considered like a really a great progenitor mate, he just disappeared, so he's dead probably. They haven't seen him in a long time. All these whales have numbers. They have numbers for each one. They've all got a name because that's how few individuals we're down to. The other thing that the change could bring in, and I get why American fishing industry people aren't keen on this, is it could allow the gates to open for products, seafood products to come in from less regulated foreign fisheries. And we don't want them coming in from fisheries that have bad practices, that kill sea turtles in their nets and things, because, that's not the answer. And the thing is, I've quoted the guy before, the oil executive, about, that capitalism may fail because it doesn't tell the ecological truth. I read this really great line the other day. There's a wonderful Australian writer called Richard Flanagan, and he called it the Western time, but really it's capitalism. And what he says is, capitalism really promotes this idea of infinite theft from a finite world. And that's how this is one planet, where we've got these species that their population numbers are really getting low. And fisher people do get, a healthy marine ecosystem relies on the tapestry of all the animals, from, your big predators all the way down. You need all those animals. You need to have them in the right proportion of population to make sure that, you know, one species doesn't get out of control. The thing we talked about last week on the show, we took away the sea otters, you know, and then we had the sea urchins, you know, they had no predator keeping their numbers low, and so they ate all the kelp. And now that we've had the sea stars die, you know, turn into goo, and so they're not eating the sea urchins just decimated the kelp forests off the coast of Southern California. And what does that ecosystem of kelp do? It mitigates the strength of a storm as it's coming onshore. And what's happening with climate change and a warming atmosphere? More storms, more water in the atmosphere, more crazy wind happening. You know, we need all these ecosystems to be healthy for us to be healthy. That's it, bottom line.
It's all connected. I'd like to think, regarding the quote you just read, that capitalism can coexist with the ability, with the desire to have a clean environment and to do things right, so we can make money and also, you know, do things the right way. But maybe I'm naive, perhaps.
No, you're optimistic.
Yeah.
And I think the fact is that in an ideal world it can, you know, that if capitalism, you know, if we have the right regulations and we have the right mandates and vision, you know, you need leaders who have vision about the planet and about the thriving of everyone on the planet. And it's really interesting, you know I keep bringing up China, but, you know, right now, you know, China's coal use equals all the rest of the world. The amount of, you know, coal that China burns equals everyone else on the planet. But what are they doing? They are shifting so fast to renewables. And, you know, I think I mentioned this last week, you know, their emissions, you know, for the first half, 3/4 of this year, you know, they were down 2%. Their emissions are starting to go down. India's, you know, had a wobbled in the downward direction. You know, the US obviously are going up because we've had this ridiculous re-embrace of coal and gas. But there are leaders who are looking at, you know, how can we be a successful country in 5 years, 10 years time, and who have a more long-range vision. So I think that capitalism could work if we really have the mandate and the vision to be embracing technologies like, you know, drones, you know, very, you know, precision agriculture with precision conservation. I mean, it just, you know, it just makes sense.
Belinda Waymouth, you always bring the hopefulness and the optimism, and thank you.
Totally my pleasure. And I try because I think it's important that we know there are good things happening out there. So
absolutely. Thank you, Belinda Waymouth. It's the planet, stupid. Bye.
More.
It's the planet, stupid. No. It's the planet, stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Love Belinda Waymouth, and spending time with her every week. I will take her name off the screen. There you go. Have some people to thank today. Jim Slayton throwing in 5. A good political Halloween costume idea would be dressing up as the North Korean lady in pink. I don't know that lady. I don't know. Is that a show? Pink? Albert, what am I missing? Help me. I don't know. Do you know what pink is?
I don't know. I have to look that up. I'm not sure either. Maybe
we'll find out. Thank you, Jim. Whatever it is, I'm sure you're right. Richard Delamater with a question for Mr. Rothmann. I have low blood pressure. Suggestion? Well, you know the suggestion.
Yeah, I gotta watch Fox
right?
News.
Yeah. Wes with 5. Thank you, Wes. There is video of Hamas. Oh no, executing 5 people on the street from yesterday, and it is horrific. Wes, awful. Thank you for the contribution. Luis with 5 wants John to know we found the price for what was a free plane from Qatar equals base plus protection. What will be the price, writes Luis, that we ultimately pay for this hostage deal? Yeah, that is the lingering question, is it not? Well, I don't think we know yet. Chaplain Fred with 10. Mr. Rothmann, how can you say Trump does not want a ground war while he has one here in the United States? I did ask the question. Thank you, Chaplain Fred. And as a Nobel Peace Prize even considered, I'm sorry, writes Chaplain Fred, that is just wrong. Hopefully we covered that. It was a recorded piece, so I couldn't ask your questions during the interview, but I think we did talk about these things. Luis, John's reasonalization or rationalization wanting to compartmentalize and honor Donald Trump with the Nobel Peace Prize equals the philosophy that motivates me to move to Spain, says Luis. Yeah, I don't think you're alone. Richard Delamater, Belinda, tell me the story of that telly on the wall. We'll ask her next week. Dan, looking at the Coachella Valley Ocotillo Espresso coffee in his "We Could Try Ignoring It, Sir" mug, and it is delicious. On a rainy day here in California, I hope you're enjoying your Ocotillo Espresso. Please do use the Coachella Valley Coffee secret Mark Thompson code. It is Mark T. Use it at checkout to get your 10% off.
For the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
And thank you for being here. You guys had great comments today. Mark is back tomorrow with David Catt and Sarah Kenzier. See you at the after party. Bye-bye.